Your organisation runs training courses for your staff and customers. Only problem is it's time-consuming, inconvenient and costly. Take a leaf out of our book. The School of Hard Knock Knocks uses the online training platform by YZ, and our team and customers love it. It's simple to use, supports every media format, audio, video, text, and looks great on desktops, tablets and mobiles. And for a limited time, quote SHKK when you arrange a demo and get 10% off your first year's plan. YZ helps us deliver comedy courses around the world. Imagine what it could do for your organisation. YZ, that's WYZED.com. YZ, online learning made simple. You're listening to the School of Hard Knock Knocks podcast with me, Maury Morgan.
Ladies and gentlemen, your next comedian.
Shouldn't drink on an empty head, you know that, don't you?
That is the shittiest heckle I have ever heard in my life.
Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it.
That's a bucket list.
You have dangerously underprepared yourself for the shit that is about to get real.
Matt O'Neill just supported the legendary Steve Hughes. How'd it happen? Like all things great in comedy, luck, a friend of a friend, and humility. In this School of Hard Knock Knocks interview with our new host Steve Davis, we learn how Matt O'Neill's bad experience with a comedian delayed his comedy career, how he has a nice persona, and the origin of his sick jokes. And of course, we learn why he was invited to warm up the audience at the Atheneum Theatre in Melbourne for Steve Hughes. And as a side note, Steve and Matt are both alumni of the School of Hard Knock Knocks. And if you're interested in kickstarting your stand-up comedy career, then check out www.schoolofhardknockknocks.com for our upcoming courses in Adelaide, Melbourne and Sydney. And now, here's the delightfully dark Matt O'Neill.
I was just chatting to Ben before, out back, and he said, Matt, 2 blocks from here, there's a brothel. Look at me. I know. But if you're looking for a guy who knows where every single McDonald's and every single brothel in Melbourne is, this is what he looks like, you know? The hardest part of that conversation was pretending to be surprised. What? Brothel? The hardest part of that conversation was pretending like I hadn't just come from there. That was... I'm only joking, of course. I've never set foot inside a McDonald's. Drive-through. Yeah? That's what it's there for. Anyway, I'm a family man. Got a beautiful wife. 2 extremely droopy tits she has. Which is just one of the many things that we both have in common.
Matt, welcome to the School of Hard Knock Knocks podcast.
Hey, how's it going?
Very well, thanks. Now, I was going to save this question for later, but I'm really excited by it, so I'm going to open with it. You supported Steve Hughes in Melbourne recently. How on earth did you get Steve to bring you under his wing, and how did it all go?
Under his wing? I don't know if I'm under his wing. We're mates, and he's a lovely guy. How did it happen? A friend of mine, a good friend of mine, is good friends with Steve, and this good friend of mine we met through comedy, and he liked what I was doing, and has been a fan, I guess, for a while. And he just told Steve about me a few times. We eventually met, and Steve and I became mates as well. And Steve said he'd come in and watch me perform at a room in Melbourne called Kings of Comedy, which is a great room in the city, which runs on Friday and Saturday nights. And Steve came down, and I didn't think he would. I thought he would flake, but he did actually come along, and that ended up being one of the most nerve-wracking performances I've ever done. But before that, because he was there, they put him on, and he did a 10-minute spot, which is unheard of for Steve Hughes. He normally does about 2 hours. And he absolutely destroyed the room. Like it was just so many levels above any comedian I've seen in this country before. And luckily we went to a break, and then they brought me on, and I thought, this isn't going to go as planned. I looked around, and Steve wasn't there. He was out in the green room celebrating an amazing performance. And just as I walked on, I got a tap on the shoulder, and he gave me a thumbs up, and he was there, and I thought, oh, God. But luckily, and this is just one of those things, I had a really great set. And, you know, it's, I guess luck does play a part, because as anyone who does comedy will tell you, you don't always have a great set. Even if you're amazing at comedy or, you know, terrible at comedy, it can go either way depending on the audience or on the night, or just how, you know, things come out of your mouth that night, timing, whatever it is. For me, all the stars aligned, I guess, and it worked out. Steve really liked it. And then luckily we were on at the lounge together a week later. So that's the Comics Lounge in Melbourne. So he got to see me again. I had a good set again. And yeah, just from there, he actually originally offered me to open for him at a heavy metal festival. And all of this, when he called me up and offered these to me, I was kind of like, you know, you're pinching yourself, but you're also kind of like, you know what, even if it doesn't happen, it's just nice to be asked. The heavy metal thing just like came and went, just didn't happen. I don't even think Steve performed at it, so I just thought, oh well, you know, at least I was asked. That's great. But then, yeah, he got in touch one night on Facebook and Messenger and just said, "Hey, do you have 20 minutes?" And I said, "No, I don't. I've got about 10." And he said, "Well, I need you to have 20 minutes because I want you to open for me at the Atheneum when I do my gig there." And I said to him, "Look, you know, how far away is that off?" And he said it was about 2 months at that stage, I think, or a month and a half. And I said, "Yeah, look, I'll make sure I have 20." As it turned out, in the end, I only needed to have 15, which was great because I only ended up having about 15, 16 minutes. So, yeah, that worked out well. And I haven't spoke to Steve since. He's been off in New Zealand, but yeah, I'm not sure if under his wing, but yeah, definitely a mate.
Matt, a couple of themes that just came up in that answer were luck, being in the right place, and also connections through people. And you also did mention Facebook and Messenger. I've noticed Steve interacting with you quite a bit on Facebook. Just how important is the Facebook and other social media connections between comedians to lead to things like this? Is that really crucial these days, or is it just icing on the cake?
I wish it wasn't. I don't know if it's crucial. I mean, look, I think for a lot of, if you were to speak to a lot of, I'm going to say open micers, because that's still what I am. If you speak to most open micers, most gigs are booked through Facebook Messenger. A lot will be like you'll have to go there and say hi originally in the room and introduce yourself and, you know, get pally with the room runner, I guess. But after that, Facebook's pretty much where it all takes place. And I mean, I guess that's fair enough. If I was a room runner, I wouldn't want everyone having my mobile number. But yeah, that's the only place that's important for that. I know for places like, I mean, it's quite obvious, but like with Instagram and things like that, if you have a massive following and you're good at comedy, it's going to be easier for you to get spots at places. So, and that you can see that happen a lot on the scene. But yeah, it's not really something I invest time in. I prefer to invest time in trying to write material and trying to be a better performer, I guess, a better comic.
So in the lead up to this interview, I connected with you on Facebook. Are you telling me that's not going to get me anywhere?
I can't give you a spot anywhere. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, definitely not. There's probably a couple of open mic rooms in Melbourne I could get you set up with, I reckon. But yeah, I don't know if that would be a triumph of the of Facebook or social media.
All right. Well, look, let's go back to the beginning of your stand-up comedy career, because it's probably a little bit different for some of us. Because unless I'm mistaken, you're British, aren't you?
Yeah, I am. Yeah, I'm Australian as well, but I moved here when I was 14. So I've been in Melbourne since then. Lived in Perth for a little bit, but mainly based in Melbourne. And I wanted to do comedy since I was about 16, but didn't grow up here till I was about 37. So yeah, that's how long it's taken me. That was mainly a confidence issue, I think, and also the first stand-up gig I ever went to was quite a massive gig in St Kilda. There was like 1,000 people there. I would have been 15 in the theatre, and I saw Glenn Robbins, Jim Owen, Bob Franklin, and a very new and fresh Dave O'Neill. And Dave O'Neill went out there and died a horrible death, and that scared me off of doing comedy from that moment on. Because I should have probably watched him closely, because he went on to be one of Australia's leading comics. So but for me, it scared me completely. So I just kept stuck to being funny at school or in the changing rooms at football and things like that.
Have you ever died a death on stage?
Not as horrible as the one I saw that night.
Right.
No. Everyone bombs. Everyone dies, and I think it just depends how what you can take from that, what you learn from that. And I think because I'm a bit older, I learn pretty quick. I'd say a bit older. I'm a lot older than most people starting out. I guess I just learn a lot. I'm not saying I learn a lot quicker, but it's definitely something I try and work on, so next time it doesn't happen, because it's not a nice feeling.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned you like putting your time into working on new material. I saw a comment on Facebook. Maury Morgan had left it under a film clip of you doing one of your sets for the school. And he said, Matt was there at the beginning of School of Hard Knock Knocks back in 2016. He's become nicer and nicer as his jokes become sicker and sicker. Is that true? And if it is, why?
Yeah, I am nice. I'm a lovely guy. I've got a wife and 2 kids. I'm a lovely dad. I'm a stay-at-home dad, actually. But I also I work from home as a graphic designer, so that's it's great to have a job where I can do both those jobs. So yes, I am a lovely person. I think I sound like a serial killer saying that. I'd imagine that's what a serial killer would say. I'm a lovely person.
You are fitting the profile beautifully. It's good.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a bit scary now. But I am a nice guy. My jokes, there is pretty dark stuff. My thing is, I'm a big horror fan. I love horror films, and I even used to, it's quite nerdy of me to say this, but I ran, used to run a horror film society that still runs here in Melbourne. And I collect horror film posters from, going back to the 50s. I like when people talk about novelists, or even comedy, they say it's got to be your truth, your truth's on stage. And, Stephen King isn't writing about his truths, but, he's writing about his nightmares. And I think that's where a lot of the stuff I do for comedy is, I've had to think about it, and it's all nightmare stuff. It's about the worst possible stuff there is. Maybe a joke about my wife dying during a sex act gone wrong or something like that. That's certainly not a truth. That's not happened. She's still alive, and but that would be a nightmare.
And I've seen you perform that joke, and it's not so much that joke, it's the fact that after a breath, boom, you just go on to the next thing. And that's what brings a lot of the laugh. It's like, my God, you just landed that on us, and now off you go with a brand new topic. It's quite eerie to watch.
Yeah, I think it's. I like to back it up. I'll always try and do something quite dark, but then back it up with something quite silly, or just like a pun or a dad joke, almost, I guess you could call it. Yeah. And I like to think that just keeps everyone on edge, because they're like, oh, thank goodness, we're doing something silly now. This guy's all right, and then I'll back that up with something a bit darker again. And yeah. but that's probably what I do. I'm not trying to be edgy. I'm not trying to. One of the worst when I first started doing comedy in open mic rooms and you're performing in front of like 2 or 3 people, stuff like that can be quite uncomfortable for everyone. And I'd watch people having a good night, and then I'd go on and say something which might be a bit confronting, and suddenly they're not having a good night. And I didn't mean for anyone to be offended, or didn't want them to go home thinking, well, that night was shit. And I used to feel quite awful about it. But again, that comes down to performance and maybe where I'm putting words and placing the words correctly to make sure that the jokes work. That's the hardest part about doing dark comedy is trying to make the audience like you. So they go on, they're on board for the ride.
What about making or keeping your wife liking you when she's in jokes like that? Has that ever backfired on you? And what advice is there to prepare a spouse or a loved one to let them know they're in the firing line?
Well, my wife and I have been together over 20 years, so she knows me very, very well. And she's a very good friend, so all this stuff I'm doing on stage is the kind of stuff we joke about normally anyway. So it's not really so much of a shocker, although there has been a time I used to do this bit about her fisting me, and there was a bit like there was a tag on it where I'd explain, she wouldn't even take her fake nails off, and she was at a gig when I did that, and there were these people sat with her who we just met, and I introduced her as my wife, and my wife caught one of them just sort of like slyly looking down at her hands to see if she had fake nails on. So after that gig, she was kind of like, I'm not sure how comfortable I am with you talking about this stuff because people seem to believe it. But, there's a lot of stupid people out there and I can't account for them all. I mean, maybe that's sometimes what gets lost with comedy in general is that, especially with someone like Steve Hughes, just to touch on him again, he's on stage, he's a comedian, he's joking. He's doing jokes, and that's what that was. That was a joke about my wife doesn't fist me, and she certainly has never, ever, I think this is the thing she was most offended by, she's never worn fake nails. So, it's just, they're jokes, and if, she understands that now, and she doesn't come to many gigs, but it's not because of that, it's purely because someone needs to stay home and look after the kids.
Now, Lou, I know you say it's just jokes, but those sorts of acts used to be part of your working life, if I'm not wrong, in your...
that's right.
Tell it, remember, this is a family-ish show. What did you used to do, and what are a couple of memorable ones that you can share with us? I was a graphic designer in the porn industry, the adult entertainment industry, for a good few years, about 4 or 5 years. And that was just, that definitely sticks with you. It's funny, I haven't really been able to do material directly about it because I guess it was too real for me. But that was just funny working there every day anyway, the stuff people were talking about. In most jobs, I'd imagine would get you fired. But it was definitely different. It's something when it comes up in conversation. It doesn't come up as much nowadays, I guess, because it's becoming a distant memory. But it's definitely something that people get interested by. As far as something I could tell you that is family friendly, I guess there was a time I met a porn star. We used to get to meet a lot of porn stars who'd come out here for business to business conventions. So there's Sexpo, but there's also these business to business conventions that they have just within that industry here in Australia. Yeah. And people come from all over the world for it. And they'd bring porn stars out from various studios. And I met one, she was actually in a mainstream film called Piranha, which was a horror film that came out, it would have been about 10 years ago now, I guess. And her name was Riley Steele. And I had like I said, I collect horror posters. So I had that poster, and I was going to get it signed by her because she was on it. So I walked up to her and she said, what's your name? And I said, Matt. And she said, oh, wow. And as she was signing, she's like, Matt,
my ex-boyfriend was called Matt. And I was like, oh, that's nice. She's like, yeah, I used to scream his name out every night. And, yeah, I went pretty red. But, yeah, that's probably just the safest thing I can tell you about that job, because the rest of it's pretty full-on.
You probably just felt like the typical beast felt when piranhas got stuck into them, at that moment.
Yeah, no, she was... she was very pretty, that's for sure. But
I'm going to stop you there to save you from yourself. Don't take that any further. A couple of last things to finish off on. I noticed after your Steve Hughes gig, you did thank a lot of people, including a lot of runners. Now, runners, of course, they run the rooms, they book people, etc. In your life, if there's a hierarchy of where people sit, where do runners sit? Are they like with casual friends, work friends, extended family, immediate family? Are they at the top, the bottom? How important are they in your hierarchy?
For comedy, or look, room runners change all the time in specific rooms. There's some rooms in Melbourne I've never done. And I'm not sure, I could say that maybe it's because it's based on whether they don't like me, or maybe it's purely based on the fact that I've never been down there to say hi. Those particular room runners I thanked on Facebook were all thanked because they were all guys I got in touch with. And normally I would never do this, but normally, you'd get in touch with a room runner on Facebook and say, hey, any free spots coming up, that would be brilliant. Thank you for your time. And they'll get back to you with a date. But I actually went to each of those guys with a date in mind, which I've never done before. And they all gratefully, on my behalf, they helped me out and give me a spot. So, whether they shifted things around. I mean, there was even a few guys who, I asked if I could go on early so I could shoot off and do another spot that night, just so I could get as much practicing that week and the lead up to it. And they were really obliging. So, they don't have to do that. They don't have to help anyone out, really. That's their room, and they get inundated with people's requests all the time. But they were kind enough to help me out on this occasion. So I just that's the reason I thank them. And yeah, generally, room runners, I feel sorry for them because they're just constantly getting messages from everyone, and I feel awful when I shoot one off, and it reads so insincere.
Yeah.
But I generally mean what I say, but I'm grateful for their time and that, because there's hundreds of us. There's hundreds of open micers out there, all vying for spots and wanting stage time. So I wouldn't wish it upon anyone.
Hey, talking of which, you've got a gig this week emceeing at Punchline's Comedy Club. David Tulker's headlining. Any tricks with emceeing that you can share?
I can't stand emceeing, if I'm honest. My tip would be not to do it. The only thing is it's one of the few ways you can get paid in comedy. I've been told and found out. But the thing is, with emceeing, like I said, I really enjoy writing and concentrating on that and getting into a flow with a 5-minute, 10-minute, 15-minute spot, whatever it is. But with emceeing, it's so stop-start. You can't go on, do a spot, then sit down and relax. I've found personally with emceeing so far in the couple of years I've been doing this, it's hit and miss. I've had some amazing nights. I've had some bad nights. I had one night where I went and emceed a Labour Party event. And I was told that they'd really like dirty stuff. And when I go out there in front of like these 60 old Labour, members, I realised that they weren't going to be into dirty stuff at all. But I still had to MC this event for 2 hours and even do like a trivia in between, and it went great. Like, it was a lot of fun, and I got good money for it. But I'd have to say, like, the week leading up to it, and it was the most stressed I've been for any gig, even the Steve Hughes one. That one, the Labour gig, was terrifying. But emceeing, you just can't. You can't. It's almost like you have to make it up on the night and see what's happening. You don't know how other comics are going to go. You really have to go with the flow. So I guess in that regard, it's great for improv skills. But at this stage, it's not really something I enjoy doing as much. But in saying that, I'm on a bit of a roll at the moment after the Atheneum gig, so hopefully Punchlines, I can keep that going.
Any other gigs coming up that you know about at the moment?
I've got some exciting ones in July, which are one of them's at Trades Hall, which will be great with Dave O'Neill and Richard Stubbs headlining, and Chris Wainhouse is on the bill as well, and so is David Talk will be on Friday night. So that one's pretty exciting. Other than that, I tend to get very, very lucky by getting spots at Kings of Comedy in the city, which is possibly one of the best rooms behind the Comics Lounge as far as comedy is concerned in Melbourne. It's always packed. There's always like 100+ people at the moment this year for whatever reason. I don't know why. It's proper audience. It's not like an open mic where you're performing mainly in front of comedians. And it's such I feel so blessed to be able to get up there as often as I do, because I've got a really good relationship with the room runner there, Simon. We've just really hit it off. He really likes what I'm doing, and I always seem to have a good night there, so I get to keep going back.
Do you think he just likes beards?
I don't know. Maybe he's a real big fan of Game of Thrones, and he thinks, I remind him of someone off of that, or Hagrid off of Harry Potter or something. I don't know, but he doesn't have a beard, so I'm going to say no on that.
Okay. Well, look, I see you're actually listed on punchlinescomedy.com. Is that the best place for people to book you, or are there other ways to get in touch with you?
Instagram would be great, at Matt O'Neill Thunderbastard, or one word. That's probably that's like my, I guess, as far as like comedians having a page, that's my page. It's Instagram. I try to direct everything there, and Facebook, and I guess Punchlines is cool as well. I don't know. I've yet to have too much booked from there other than Punchlines. So yeah, we'll see what happens.
Exactly. Matt O'Neill, thanks for being on the School of Hard Knock Knocks podcast.
Thanks, Steve.